They didn't give me a microphone because I waved my hands a lot and you might get hurt, so they gave me a different one. All right, so my story from the field, rehumanizing my classroom. I was thinking about it and I realized, kind of like what Brett said, it had to start with rehumanizing me. About 2 years ago, I was ready to be your poster child for the burnt-out teacher. I was just, do this, no, do that, do this. Oh, that's such a nice idea, but really we need to take this seriously now, so do this. And I was completely losing my spirit, my passion for what I was doing. And then I was looking at my students and looking for their spirit and passion and going, huh. And then thinking, what do they do all day? Do this. No, do that. No, not do this. Stop playing. Get serious. And I saw that, and luckily, right before I said, new career, please, my fairy godmother swooped right in on her fat Harley, and she started spreading some magic. And within 2 months, I was in the TARI program in San Leandro that Brett talked about, and I was in the Lesley University program. And then everything started happening, and it was great. So today, as I'm looking at all the bubbles of all the things that Elaine and I have learned in this, I decided to choose those two, and I'll tell you some stories from my classroom, from the field. Okay, making thinking visible. One of the best examples of, backtrack. When I first started teaching, and I was thinking about this rehumanizing community and all of this, I thought I had kind of two things I was doing. I was working with the academics and deepening student thinking and growing ideas and all of that, and I had to build community. So I had to make sure and throw in those community building activities and kumbaya and kindness and love and all of this. And then I had to make sure that we did some serious academics. What the beautiful thing was is that I discovered that I could do both at the same time. As I was integrating the arts, it was deepening their thinking. It was making them use higher level thinking skills. It was building communication and conversations that then they were using the academic language. And through that, humanity was restored in the classroom and democracy in the way that we work together. So one example that I really enjoyed where this became apparent, and use my lovely students as an example. I was also teaching about the cell, which I know you all were thrilled about when you were in school. And we're looking at the functions of each organelle. So in the past, we go through the functions, and the cell wall protects the cell. So this time, what was I? This time I asked the students to reinterpret that through the language of movement. One group did this. And this was their cell wall. It protected the cell. Another group took a different approach and did this. And they were protecting the cell. And what happened was that suddenly, of course, thank you. What happened is now we moved away from a conversation about content lists and went to, what does protection mean to us? Went to a conversation between people. What does it mean? Why is it different? There are different kinds of protection. What does it mean to the cell? And we can go there in a human, in a more human way about who we are while we're still doing the academics. So, yes. And then the same kind of thing I saw, whether we did visual arts, and they're doing these analogies of the digestive system, or this one they were using ribbons to look at the wavelengths and the different colors and have they have different frequencies and making some creative movement with that. And the thing with these is not only did it open the communication away from just abstract concepts into who we are, but it started people talking together with each other. And they had to realize that, wait a second, I don't know this as well as I thought. You know, I could regurgitate what my teacher told me, but once I have to figure out what am I going to do with this ribbon, or once I have to figure out which analogy I'm going to use, I don't know this as well as I thought. So then they start asking questions, and now they actually care, and now they're talking with each other, and again, it's now a democratic community of learning and thinking and working together, and not just we're going to do all of these things that it was before. So as that happens, let me start looking at ownership and empowerment that comes from that. Remember your favorite worksheet from high school? Remember when you went home and you were like, oh my God, I did this worksheet and it was amazing, and maybe even talked about it years later, right? Yeah. Okay. So let's really think about it. Here's two examples from the same project. They had to envision some sort of way to represent the fact that we are organisms, which are made of organ systems, made of organs, tissues, cells, organelles. And that was sort of our map for the year, as we're going to zoom into the human body and the plant body. And they had to envision some way to do it. So one student once came up with this fabulous idea that I couldn't have thought of: nesting origami boxes. Another student decided to do something else with the box. She was working and just sitting there. She wasn't really producing a whole lot, but I had this feeling to just leave her alone. And she's sitting and sitting, and after a while, "Can I have a box, Miss Pine?" "Okay, is this going to work?" "Yeah, sure." And then she starts digging in there, and I couldn't see her head. She was in there doing things. Every once in a while, she asked me about bats, and I was like, "We have one computer, go ahead. I don't know what bat organs look like." And so she's researching, she's in there, and she comes to me. You know that look that you get when you turn in the worksheet? No. And she gave me this box, and it still looked like that. Okay. She said, no, look inside. So I said, well, maybe put a sign. Okay. Then all of us will know to look inside. And then I looked inside. And you can't see it so much, but I couldn't have thought of this. She had done these layers, zooming into the organs and tissues and cells of the bat, and inside this box, hanging on strings with this light thing coming in the back. And is that something you'd probably go home and tell your parents about? Yes. I can even see her in a coffee shop 20 years later, something about bats comes up. "Oh, guess what? Once, when I was in middle school, I did this box with these bats inside, and there were organs and tissues and cells." And suddenly, she remembers a 7th grade lesson 20 years later. So, I just want to leave you one last thought. And this is a lesson gifted to me by the amazing Claire Beauvais, who is teaching a mini workshop later this afternoon. She's with Mills Teacher Scholars. And this is called Card Castles. And what happens is she took these card catalogs from those of us that are old enough to remember the card catalogs. There was a day without computers, people. And then what the students do is there's no tape, there's no glue, there's anything. There's only friction and gravity. And they start building these castles. And they start to build them by themselves. And then they slowly start creating with the people next to them and connecting them and using ideas that they see from other people and trying to use that in their castles until we've built a whole village of these card castles. And the whole thing is done in complete silence. So they're having to figure out how to communicate with each other. And the reason I'm sharing this with you, besides that it looks cool, is I was thinking about where we've been. Here we were, the teachers. Here were the artists. Here were the administrators. And building our own little castles. And now we're looking to each other and trying to figure out how can we meld those together and how can we work together, create a beautiful castle city and recreate what education is, repurpose the materials that we have, just like we repurpose those. And the last thing was, sometimes when you're working with only gravity and friction, it all falls down. It doesn't work quite right. And there's a nature artist, sculptor, Zach Pine, no relation. And he says whenever things fall down, he says, "Great, an opportunity to rebuild." So I thank you, and I look forward to a wonderful opportunity to rebuild with all of you.